common law under God. And we've got Frank here and Helene, and I'm Catherine Hine, your host. And everybody's welcome to join in. We're going to deal with how we can stop self-sabotaging. And the actual name of the broadcast is, this is our second part, and what can we do about being our own worst enemies? What would Jesus tell us about solutions from 12-step programs and transactional analysis? There are other psychological approaches, of course, too. But before we get into this any further, I want to do our prayer. Heavenly Father, you are our rock, our fortress, and our deliverer, our strength in whom we will trust, our protective shield against evil, and the source of all salvation. Help us to understand that we have nothing to fear in this life because it is you, not the worship of the god Mammon or any other, who delivers us and who has the entire universe under your righteous control every moment. It is you who provides for our daily human needs, just as you do for the lilies of the field, the sparrows that fly in your skies, and the fish that swim in your seas. Give us the strength to trust you as we repent from having unwittingly or obsessively fed the evil that now surrounds us. We humbly ask for your forgiveness as we admit our utter powerlessness without you. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen. I think we covered some of the first, tried to cover the first four steps last time, but these are not necessarily in sequence. It's not like when you do step one, you never have to revisit it again. And step one, for those who may not recall, and you might want to put up the 12 steps if you can. I just did it as a copy and paste, Frank, when I sent those to you. But the first step being where we admit that we are powerless over our obsessive idolatry, which is really the only thing I can call what our part has been.
Remember CRV at the First Ohio?
What was that? Okay. All right. I don't know if anybody can see that better than I can, but yeah, the first step is we admitted we were powerless over our obsessive idolatry or any kinds of obsessive conduct, that our lives had become unmanageable. If we are going to continue to blame others, not that they don't deserve plenty of blame, and they do, but as long as we're focused on it's them, it's what they are doing, then we're never going to find any kind of a solution. Now, let's clear up again for those who were not with us on the first broadcast, basically last 2 weeks ago. How is this like the 12 steps? How is our current predicament like being in the throes of alcoholism? And I would also encourage people to realize too that program, based on the Bible, developed in 1935 in Ohio with as two alcoholics working together to try and come up with a solution, and this is what they came up with. But it wasn't too much longer after Alcoholics Anonymous was created that the another 12-step program, Al-Anon, was created for those who suffered because of their obsessive fixation on the alcoholic. Their drug was not alcohol. Their drug was the alcoholic, the behavior of the other man or woman, and many suffering Al-Anons, as I was, came to meetings with the idea, I'm going to fix my alcoholic. I'm going to learn how to fix my alcoholic. Well, then I was quickly told, you're in the wrong place. You can't fix someone else. They have to want to change. You're not going to. You need to work on you, not on your alcoholic. Let them work their program and you work your program. It's the same program, but some differences. There's still 12 steps, and there's still the first step, which is the powerlessness. We're certainly powerless over the behavior of other people who are currently making our lives miserable. But what we'll we have to address that first. What have we tried? And I know from our little chit chat before the broadcast, and there are many people who believe that powerless? Are you kidding me? Powerless? No way. And from your experience, you had success in the system, Frank. I have had success in the system. I'm not powerless, right? Until, I found out that I was. I thought I was smart enough and I worked hard enough and I had enough evidence and I had this and I had that, and I don't think I thought about having God on my side, because I don't think God was on my side going into those dens of iniquity that the Bible tells us not to go into. But at a certain point, when I understood finally, after 5 years of being absolutely sure that I wasn't powerless and I was going to get my son free from psychiatric torture, once I realized that I wasn't doing anything for him, I was not able to reduce his the amount of torture he was experiencing, not by one iota. And he remains in the system to this day. I believe that had I known what I know today, had I known about the godly way of resolving conflict instead of the cabal corporation way of resolving conflict, it might have been a different story, depending on the grace of God, depending on my son himself, of course. But that's not what happened, and it took what it took for me to come to the point of admitting that I was powerless over my obsession with the legal system and my conviction that it was not going to defeat me. As long as I was playing on their turf, though, it not that I didn't sometimes prevail, but oftentimes it was out of my control, and I was seeing that over time that system was becoming more and more evil, and I was becoming less and less able to lie to myself that what I was doing was working. There are people out there, there's a lot of people out there. Most people out there are totally convinced that they're going to get the right attorney, and they're going to dig out all the statutes and the codes, and they're going to figure it all out, and they're going to beat them at their own game. And we've talked about this before. Okay. Thanks for that, Frank. Most hearings that you attended had predetermined outcomes. Okay. Certainly, yeah. and many people are becoming aware of that, and sometimes those facts will help us to reach um, what AA calls hitting bottom. Um, if you're not going to reach the point of powerlessness until you have reached bottom. That's the theory of AA. The goal of AA, the goal of the 12 steps, is to get people to raise their bottom, to raise the point at which do they have to really wait. In the case of the alcoholic, some alcoholics have to wait until their alcoholic drinking is so bad that they're vomiting blood and hemorrhaging from the rectum all at the same time. Then sometimes that gets their attention that maybe I really am powerless over this substance. And for everybody, it's different. However, it takes what it takes. And if you, obviously, we're going to be more capable of taking the next steps if we don't have to wait until we're at death's door before we admit we were powerless. So some people will not reach that. For some people, hitting bottom means death, literally. And that can happen with alcoholism, and it can happen with any of the obsessive behaviors that are associated with the cabal, the corporate cabal system. We know what they do, but they do it. Every bit of what they do involves our cooperation in some way. Maybe our unwitting cooperation, but our cooperation nonetheless. In recent years, I've been in the position I usually found myself in, and that is I'm the helper, okay? And that can become being the helper, and I see a lot of other people too become helpers. And there's nothing wrong with being a helper, but it can be self-defeating when the helping becomes compulsive and is not particularly helpful to the helpee. Oftentimes, for example, I find myself trying to help people who really they don't want to help themselves. They don't want, I provide them with templates, for example. You can follow this. I will walk you through it, and they don't. It's obvious. I tell them, work on it as much as you can yourself, and I can tell they didn't work on it. They didn't read the thing through. The template might be created for, a woman, and, a man is trying to use it, and he's got her and she all through the document that he didn't change because he didn't freaking look at it. I ask people, did you study the website to see what we have done so you can learn by example? Not yet. Okay, well, maybe you'll be ready next month, next week, whenever. But that's the challenge I have, is to not try and, be smothering and do things for people that they can and should do for themselves. Not because I don't have time or I'm too lazy to do it for them, but because if they do it for themselves, they're going to learn a lot more than if I do it for them. And I know that a lot of people have a lot of challenges because of the cabal system, and a lot of those challenges consist of the incredibly crappy quality of what's being called public education. It's really just indoctrination. by the corporate cabal. And a lot of people do not know how to form a coherent English sentence. They just don't know how to do it. Or either that, or they're just too lazy to do it. Um, uh, they don't know the basics of grammar. I some people I see that I just wonder, how do you even put thoughts together? I mentioned this to Keith a while back, that a man was responding to an email, and uh, the 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 man who had sent out it was there's another meeting tonight, okay, earlier this evening, and in that email announcement, the host of that other broadcast had said something about the technical system was evolving, and he hoped it would evolve in a better direction, and got the response from one of his people that don't use the word evolve. What? I think I just wonder how people get out of bed in the morning sometimes. How do you get your clothes on? How do you think it through to do that? If you see the word evolve, that's a bad thing. That means you believe in Charles Darwin and his theories of evolution. I don't know how people think, but I have some theories about why people can't string a couple of thoughts together in any coherent form. And one of those reasons is too many pharmaceutical products. And that may get me banned here, but as long as I don't mention the C word, I think I'm okay. But that that's definitely something we're going to have to learn to deal with, because the enemy is more than just, you know, the obsession that we have is not just with we're going to beat them at their own game in the corporate legal system, but we're going to be healthy because we got good health insurance and a great doctor. You know, and we're leaving God out of the equation in both instances. God has his own rules for law, which we have on our website, by the way, www.occr2021.com, on the homepage. And God has his rules about health. And he tells us right at the beginning, you know, that he's provided everything for us that we would need. And not one word was said about pharmaceutical products. Let's see. Yeah. That said, of course, just as with alcohol, initially it didn't seem so bad. You know, it was a way of enhancing our enjoyment of a situation. It was this, it was that. We might have gone for years drinking alcoholically or obsessing over a loved one who is drinking alcoholically without there being, you know, the horrific consequences. Same way we can go for years, as I did. I went for 40-some years in the fake corporate legal system before finally understanding that this was a hoax. This was a hoax, and I never understood that. Anyway, but you have to get a little bit of truth, I think, before you can understand that you're powerless over it. Maybe the truth can come later. All I knew was what I was doing was not working. It was not useful. It was not. I had no power over these imposters. So That's when I resigned. Um, yeah, Keith brings up about and feel free, let me know if you want to jump in and say anything.
Yeah, Catherine. Yeah, with getting back to the dependency of the system that we're in, because everyone is so comfortable with it. You've been using it for years, so it must be okay to continue on like we've been doing. However, what it does is that we are enabled. It's enabling us to be for the dependency of it.
Mhm.
And even though it may be harming us, it may be robbing us of our life savings.
Yes.
Fighting in a court cabal system, and it's going to drain your life savings. You may even end up with nothing at the end. And you're thinking to yourself, "Well, I know I can just win this because I know I can get a win out of this, or I can get ahead, or I can beat them." And you
Yeah, you
can't.
got the evidence, right?
You're
You
right.
got the
You're right.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't work, and it never happens. And you're chasing something that never happens. Like the great pumpkin is going to finally come, and it's never going to come.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like an addiction, right? It's the same thing, like any other addiction. We think that we're going to get something if we just do it long enough, or we try hard enough, it's going to work, but it won't. We
Or
just
we
dig our heels in more, and we dig our hole even deeper.
One of the things that they say in the 12-step book is for people who cannot admit their powerlessness, we suggest to them, well, maybe you're not a real alcoholic. Why don't you go back to controlled drinking? See how that works. And usually doesn't take very long for them to understand, oh, yes, I am powerless.
Yeah, they'll think they can just have one drink or two drinks and say, okay, I'll quit then. But then they keep
Uh-huh.
drinking some more.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Controlled drinking, right?
Or, I'll just try and beat this one traffic ticket. I'll just try and, this is serious and they threaten me with they're going to arrest me if I don't go to one of their fake tribunal hearings. So just this once I'll do it. This once I'll be able to, I'll be able to persuade them that that I'm right and I have the evidence and that they're wrong. Yeah. Because if I don't go, they'll come and they'll arrest me and they'll do bad things to me. But of course, if you think that, what are they going to do to you when you get there, and then you're really under their spell? Well, maybe you need to find out. A lot
Yep.
of people need to go back, and they need more pain.
Yeah, just go into their jurisdiction. Find what
Yeah.
happens.
Mhm. There's no better learning experience than pain. Um, so hopefully it doesn't take so much pain that that you've become completely disabled by it when you know that you have supportive other people who are who've been where you are. And in our situation, we have a common law assembly that has assembled into a court, and just like AA has a group, and they even point out that sometimes at the beginning, the uh, the the group can serve as the higher power. Well, for people who just will not accept a higher power, they don't know how to accept a higher power. Um, okay, Frank, you're saying your granddaughter plays something craft. Oh, those. Oh, yeah, those video games are. Those are addictive.
Oh,
Those
very
are
much so.
addictive time wasters. Yes.
Yeah, so it's not just time they're wasting. It's free, right? But to advance in the game or to have more fun or to be able to do things faster, you have to buy things. And they're fake things in the game, but they cost real money.
It consumes you. It consumes your brain. It consumes your money. It consumes your time.
Yeah, and what's it doing to your brain? Yeah. When you spend hours and hours every day on that instead of actually educating yourself about
Especially in front of a
something.
computer.
Right.
Well, she's not doing her schoolwork. She just plays those games.
Uh, yeah. I almost forgot. That's a for a certain age group. That's really, I don't know. There are people in their 20s and 30s addicted to this too, though, aren't there?
Sure. Well, she's 10, but now it's just
Uh,
starting up with my grandson. He's only 5.
oh. Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's very cunning. I mean, it kind of make it gets you into it, and once you get started, it's like you can't stop, right?
But they make you feel productive. Like
Mhm.
Or
she was
make you feel
showing
important.
me, she was showing me the house that she bought, and I said, "Well, with what job?" And she says, "Oh, you don't need a job. They just give you a house."
Oh, yeah, yeah. Maybe they're getting people ready for the guaranteed basic income.
Oh, you mean have nothing and or get
Yeah,
that kind of thing?
yeah, yeah. I'm wondering if the video games are serving an ulterior purpose
Could very well be.
besides the brain rot that's happening. You know, when the game player spends all that time. Of course, um, a lot of us spend time on social media in a similar way. You know.
Yeah, or watching the so-called news.
Or they
Yeah.
think you're going to get something for nothing. Yeah, get your debts paid at college. You're going to get all that paid for, so you don't have to pay a thing.
Mhm. Mhm.
Or maybe it's a certain kind of mentality that's created in the culture and society.
Well, certainly, the education indoctrination systems, have fed into this in a huge way, and of course, there are solutions to this. Um, I have not had people on the broadcast who are doing homeschooling. I I talk to people who do, but I'm not really clear on what their um, the degree to which they remain enslaved to the corporate public school system, even while they're homeschooling. At the beginning of the homeschooling, um, it became kind of a phase. It became, and I don't think it's going to go away. I think more and more people are going to do it, but it's it's going to be uh, some. And initially, they were threatened with truancy. The schools, of course, are hooked in corporately to CPS, so that you have a black mark on you right away if you're homeschooling. Uh, there are ways that uh, you can make it clear that you're homeschooling not with their permission. You're doing your own homeschooling. Thank you very much, and it's not um, something that you're going to give the corporate school district control over. But I do think most homeschoolers are still attached in some way to the cabal public school,
Yeah, and I
which
think
which is making money at the same time. They get to count that kid as one of their enrollees. I think.
because I think many parents need to be careful when they tell their students, "Hey, you can just stay at home and you can have virtual learning," and think that that's going to be a replacement for homeschooling. Nope. Don't think even that's the case because it's not.
Oh, yeah. So the school districts are starting to like mimic that with this virtual learning. How does that work, Keith? You know?
Well, they could have, whatever it is, video conferencing, Zoom calls,
Uh huh.
whatever message communication they want to use to, have it on a platform on the computer or smartphone or whatever you're using. And a student stays at home, and then of course there's either a teacher at the other end, or even an automated system that teaches them whatever they want taught. We don't know. It could be anything, really. Does it even have to be a real teacher?
Probably not. Yeah, probably AI is taking it over, I imagine, or is about to.
I can give some examples from a local school district here in Austin. So I'm a volunteer, a mentor in a program for for children of incarcerated parents.
Uh,
So they do have these programs already to learn programming and things like that. That's 100% automated. You go through the course; it's like a video game, and you take the steps through the video game to, reach certain levels, and you're supposedly learning programming along the way. And I, followed through it with a couple of the kids, and it wasn't. It really wasn't very good. But that's what they're using nowadays.
mm. Okay, well, looking, trying to keep this focus on solutions. Step two is came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. That power would be God. In the program they call it the God of our understanding, and sometimes that the higher power is the group, the assembly, because they certainly the group um, has more power to restore the suffering addict to sanity than he or she had all by himself through the exercise of his own will all by himself. That's once you've done step one and you understand that you're convinced that by your own efforts you're not going to succeed. You can then go into step two um, and come to believe that a power greater than yourself can restore you. And of course, the God of my understanding, our Heavenly Father, there's nothing He can't do. So, and as it happens, He provides us with all the rules about um, law, how we should interact with one another, and justice. And He also provides us with how to take care of our bodies. Um, so you know, we have that to we can share our experience, strength, and hope with each other in our assemblies to actually put that into practice. And a lot of people are disgusted with religion. Of course, um, many churches have become corporate. In fact, you can hardly find a church these days that isn't a corporation, and it's unnecessary to be a corporation. Yeah, oftentimes they're mega churches, but sometimes they're not. But they're typically incorporated, and that means that they have turned their their mission over to the corporate state that gives them authority under the corporate state to to do to act as a church. So and, there is evidence that the feds are coming into these churches. They are telling them what the pastors can and cannot talk about. So, you know, that's a problem. That's a problem. And a Bible study, I think, would be a different thing. In the Bible, of course, a church is not the brick and mortar building, and it's certainly not a corporation, which, as we know, is defined to be a a mental construct that is created to enable a business to be carried on that may harm other people without incurring liability by the agents of that corporation or its officers. So, um, you want to tell us about your lesson learned the hard way?
Well, there've
Right.
been a couple different ones, but
Okay.
the one in particular, there was a corporation in Ohio. Their initials are Omnitronics LLC. For anybody listening, uh,
Okay.
they and if you look up Omnitronics versus whomever on Google, you'll see a long list of things that happened. You can speak to the law director of Conneaut, Ohio, too. But
Oh
they
wow.
sort of made a habit of acquiring other corporations, and in fact, they're written up in the Harvard Law Journal for it. Acquiring other corporations and transferring over their assets and leaving their debts behind. They screwed over a lot of people in the process, and screwed a lot of people out of their retirement pensions and everything. But it was
Yeah.
all legal when you look at it carefully. They dotted their I's and crossed their T's, and the system made it work.
Legal maybe, but not lawful.
Right.
And the people didn't know any better, so they just let it happen because they didn't. My people perish for lack of knowledge.
Yeah, I can think of one corporation that moved out of the our local city and moved to another state. And what happened was with the retirement accounts, they decided to offer a lump sum and saying we'll give you a lump sum if you forego getting checks, your retirement checks, so we can just cancel all this out and be done with it. So a lot of people go for it, and it's really not. It's really misleading to the people that actually take it. They think they're getting something because they're getting a lump sum, but really you're losing out, a lot for, because you're not going to have that coming in anymore. You get the lump sum, it's
Right.
not a good thing
Not in inflationary times. It sure isn't. Yeah.
because you're actually going to lose a lot more money if you had continued to get that check, but then you decided not to.
And of course, all the source of that was um, there. Somebody stole it from your paycheck or the retiree's paycheck when they were working. It was stolen from them under the guise of oh, this is your contribution to your retirement plan, right?
Well, that's
I can't.
taken out when the it's taken it. They took out $100 in 1990. Then they want to say, okay, in 2024 they'll give me back the $100, but it's not the same $100 it was.
Right, right. And they earn beaucoup on the stock market with that.
Oh yeah, interest. Investing that $100 is going to be worth to them. Who knows how much more? And then they're going to give it back to you, $100. But you missed out on all the benefits of what you could have done with that $100 had they not taken it.
Yeah, and but you're always given the impression that it was not a choice. That's where you should have asked questions and you didn't. And I just had a conversation with a man who's working for a corporation, well-known international IT corporation, and they a group of about 70 of them were called together and shown a contract, a non-disclosure agreement. And the beginning of the non-disclosure agreement, it talks about we've reviewed the big contract between these two corporations, one of which is the corporation that supposedly employs them or employs their straw man anyway. And we have determined that blah 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 blah. And my friend and I asked my friend, did you in fact review those mega contracts between the two corporations, one of which is the one you supposedly work for? No, never seen that. Well, if you sign this non-disclosure agreement, you're saying that you've reviewed it and you thoroughly understand it. Anyway, they had the meeting then, and my friend was the only one he brought this up. The other 60-some people were just, like deer in the headlights. They were going to just go ahead and sign. And then he raised the issue, and the corporate guy didn't have an answer, didn't have a good answer anyway, and never came up again. Well, it'll come up again, but probably after they find some way to get my friend out of the equation. So, yeah, you just have to. I think once you're in the state of mind that that you can be restored to sanity, and that you have been restored to some kind of sanity, you can start to see reality for what it is and not be duped. Okay. A good rule of thumb, and you don't have to study all their statutes and codes and contracts and history. You don't have to study all of that and digest all of that to know that you didn't agree to it. They're going to interpret it the way that they want to interpret it, and in their history is that they're always lying about whatever they're doing, and you want to get yourself in a position that you're going to be able to withdraw from the situation, not be part of it, not cooperate with harm that's being done to you. If you don't, once you learn to let God help the situation, and you stop standing in God's way to help the situation, it has ways of getting resolved. Okay, so I think we got into step 2 and 3. 3 was to make a decision to turn our will and our lives over to God as we understand Him, and that's what a lot of us have done in Ohio. We've got a godly common law court, and an assembly that backs that up. So like anything, it's finding a solution involves doing the work. Um, Having someone show you what can be done and then doing it. There's there's a lot of learning that happens with doing rather than someone just telling you this is what we do. Um, the fourth step is that's tricky. It requires a lot of self-honesty, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. What that is designed to do is to uncover a lot of the other obsessive behaviors that we're engaged in that are feeding into the main addiction. Other obsessive behaviors are like other substances, the abuse of other substances, because that can go a long way in clouding your thinking about your main addiction. Other compulsive activities, but it takes a certain level of honesty, and this should be done with another member, another fellow sufferer, because they can help you stay honest with yourself about what your weaknesses really are. And we have different gifts from God, and what one doesn't have, our friends in the program or in the assembly can help fill in the blanks. Step 5 is where you really do bring in another human being as well as God, and you admit the nature of how you've done harm to others, and there might not be, a lot of that can be difficult because so much of the time we want to point the finger at other people. We wouldn't have done this if they hadn't have done that. But we have to own what our part has been in our misery. Yeah, good point, Keith. It really helps to have a sponsor in the 12-step programs, just as it helps to have a sponsor in the lawful assembly that we've got. Not all sponsors are equal. When I was initially in Al-Anon, I had a sponsor who was not helpful. She did not return my calls. She never checked on me. But fortunately, I had a neighbor that was also in a different 12-step program. She was in Overeaters Anonymous, and same 12 steps, different addiction, but she had a background in psychology too, and she was amazing, and I owe her a lot. Thank you, Marge. And the God of her understanding is a lot different than the God of my understanding, but it didn't matter. She was there for me. Yeah, learn to let go and let God, That's what they say ego is, edging God out. We decide to take it over ourselves, whatever the problem is, knowing or having good reason to know that the problem's too much for us. We're not effective on our own. Um, so I'm going to ask Frank to pull up the transactional analysis stuff. There's a This kind of gives we're switching gears now, but it can maybe help enrich the 12-step experience. Um, the This was created by that one in the upper left is or the second one in. That's pretty good too. Any of them. Yeah, that one's good. That's good. Okay, here's the theory. This is kind of an old psychology theory, and it says that oh, that's much better, Frank. Thank you. That we all have within ourselves. This is just a way of thinking about our personalities and our interactions or transactions with other people that can help us figure out what's going on, why are certain emotions getting triggered, and so we can understand ourselves better. Within everybody, supposedly, there are three ego states. One is the parent ego state, and that's the nurturing part of one's personality that's necessary to nurture a child or to nurture other people. Also, part of the parent ego state is the critical parent. Now you better do this and you better not do that. That's the source of moral instruction, and that can be contaminated. That parent ego state can be contaminated, where they're providing erroneous information or ungodly moral teaching, but that's the parent ego state, and then the next one down is adult. The adult ego state is the state that we have to process information and to show others how to do something, to learn how to do something ourselves, to share information, to solve problems, to share objective information. Then anybody want to comment on the adult ego state? Oh, what? Yeah, great question, Frank. What should we call idolatry, addiction, recovery? Well, in the program, switching back now to the 12 steps, recovery is recovery. In the idolatry, our goal is to worship God, not to worship idols, not to make idols out of compulsive activities or the god Mammon, for example, which many people do. And that's how you get into, compulsive workaholism, for example. You're maybe worshiping the god Mammon. You don't even know why you're working 50 gazillion hours every week. You're just piling up those Federal Reserve notes, and just because it feels like you're doing something productive, and yet have no time to do anything. And you may very well find that your hard-earned FRNs are going to end up worthless. But workaholism is one of those addictions that gets a lot of social approval. So it's hard to get away from that. but yes, you could call the recovery from idolatry, you could call it recovery, or you could just call it, letting go and letting God, turning our lives over to God, becoming lawful, and accepting the freedom that comes with the worship of the one true, all-powerful God, uh, rather than the slavery that addiction is. So that's really what it is. Addiction is mind enslavement, whatever the substance happens to be. It's still the enslavement of the mind. Only God can truly free us. So and accessing God through His law, through His Word, through what He tells us to do for our health, all those things, help us tap into that power and that freedom that only He can give us. Switching back to the diagram. This is just sort of a side trip to let people know what they're dealing with when it comes to outside negative forces. The C stands for child. The child ego state is everybody has a child ego state, and Eric Byrne, who's been one of the promoters of this 40, 50 years ago, whenever it was, refers to the adaptive child and the free child. And the adaptive child is the child that just, maybe an abused child, just wants to be loved, just wants to please, and is willing to do what it takes to protect its little fragile self. As a child, you're weaker than everybody else, and you're less knowledgeable than everybody else, and everybody else is your boss. Sometimes even other children are your boss. That's why you fall for the schoolyard bully all the time. You have an adaptive, the adaptive child, the child who's been probably parented too much by a critical parent, produces an adaptive child. A free child is so the adaptive child is the one that falls for everything, falls for every hoax, believes everything. The free child, though, is the child that the ego state that has fun, that plays, that has creativity. Particularly when you have interactions child to child. Yes, those can be destructive, but yes, innocent, but sometimes gullible. Let's do this, let's do that, and they can create things. It's not just necessarily about entertainment. Now, there's where we get all screwed up is when our three ego states interact with somebody else's three ego states or parts of them. We're usually only able to use one ego state at a time in any transaction with somebody else. So, let's say parent to parent. That would be, where you have an arrow going between the red P and the blue P. So your parent, the ego state, has a transaction with somebody else's parent ego state. What would that look like? It would be like, look at what they're doing in the public schools, for example. Ain't it awful? Oh, it's terrible. What about this? What about that? It's just terrible. A lot of ain't it awful games get played in a parent to parent interaction. It can also be productive. It can be, I found a great recipe that's healthy, and I can share that with you. And although that could be called an adult to adult communication also. Um, so then there's the parent to child interaction, and there's a lot of us that continue to have, uh, when we interact with our parents, although our parents may be 80, 90 years old, we're still interacting with them in a child ego state as if we were five. And that uh, it could be appropriate. I mean, if the child, now an adult, is ill, for example, the nurturing parent who's older, can provide nurturing for her adult child. Usually those roles get switched over time, so that the man or woman the little boy or little girl who grows into the man or woman provides a parental role to the parent, the mother or father who once had parented them. So this is all very fluid, and if it works for the two people and you don't have cross transactions, which is where problems can arise. For example, if you have a critical parent talking to their adult child and addressing the child, you shouldn't be doing that, and why did you marry him, and why'd you get pregnant so fast, and why this, why that, and the a better response to that than responding as a child, crying or placating behaviors, is to respond, let's say, between an elderly mother and her grown daughter. A better response, a more adaptive response, would be the adult daughter responds as an adult and seeking a response going this way, from right to left, from her adult to her mother's adult, trying to reach that adult that's still in her mother somewhere. This is what we decided to do, and this is why we decided to do it, and it's really our business that we decided to do this. That's one way to break the manipulation that comes from the parent to child confrontation when it's no longer appropriate. Anyway, I encourage people to learn about those, and what I'm concerned with for us in general dealing with addiction to our compulsive behaviors with regard to the corporate oppressors is that our adult ego states are not very well developed. That's a problem. We simply don't have very much information. A lot of the information we do have is wrong, and we don't know it's wrong. And that prevents us from being able to deal with manipulations like these on the screen as well as we we would be able to if we had a fully developed, intact, knowledgeable adult going on in our psychological makeup. Um, a lot of us have been traumatized as children, so we've got, you know, we were not taught to be anything but critical parents or maybe even abusive parents ourselves. And if we don't have a well-developed adult, we're not going to be able to fix our own contaminated parent within our own ego state. I think we have to maintain a healthy, well-developed adult state, or the other two states are going to bring us to victimization, either being victimized by ourselves, our own gullibilities, our own cowardice, or they're going to lead us to victimize others. So, anyway, I'm just putting that out there as another tool for people to look at to understand the work that they may need to be doing in order to stop being victims and to stop being enslaved to not only the external abusers, but enslaved to our own ignorance, our own obsessive, dysfunctional idolatries to our own abusers. There's another term for that. They call it when you're basically addicted to the abuse, because the abuser can be not just a source of abuse, but the abuser can be a source of comfort sometimes as well. And so when you know that, you understand that, you can make a better decision about how you're going to reduce the amount of damage, and maybe you may want to just walk away from the damage from the abusive situation if you can't find a way to deal with it in a healthy way. Anyway, so I had meant to go through steps 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 tonight, and I didn't really get through those, but we'll have another broadcast on how we're self-defeating through our idolatrous
I didn't mean to.
conduct in addictions. So anyway, and then I plan on having another broadcast that's going to deal with maybe part 4 or 5 even, to deal with the psychology of the abuser and the psychopathic personality, because it is important that we understand the enemy and how they work. Anybody have any comments they wanted to make, or questions, or suggestions? Keith says, with compulsions, one can keep the compulsion going. Yeah, when we do that, we harm ourselves further. Yeah, the compulsion can feel like self-medication. You know, it can feel like it's reducing the pain, and it may do that for a while until it makes it worse. Okay, well, thank you, everybody that was on the broadcast, and I urge you to, if you have any questions one-on-one, feel free to call me, 614-633-0215. I'm particularly interested in people in Ohio, but joining our Ohio Circuit Court of Record. You can check us out on our website at OCCR 2021 at .com. That's the email, but the website is www.occr2021.com. I would be happy to help people from other states to deal with their issues, because there are similarities everywhere, and every time I interact with somebody, I'm always learning something new myself about what we're up against, and I will help anybody in any other state who's serious about forming their own godly common law court. Thank you, everybody, and we'll be back again in 2 weeks, August 8th at 9 p.m. Eastern. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you.